Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Lenny Minna-Hoppenworth, and we are live streaming on Indivisible Illinois Facebook page. We are streaming in from Indivisible Illinois Facebook page. We are going to be here every Thursday until Election Day. There are 137 days until Election Day. If you want to keep track of how many days there are left, go to resistancebuttons.com and check it out. There's a countdown timer there. We know that at this moment there is a lot going on, so we would love to have a concentrated moment in time to just catch you up on what we've been up to. So if you have never been here before, Indivisible Illinois is part of a grassroots network that organically sprung up after Trump was elected. I myself was never politically involved before 2016, but I have kids and I have friends who were very concerned about what Trump was going to do once he got into office. So we decided to get together, and 5 of us from Illinois organized 10,000 people to go from Illinois to Washington, D.C. for the Women's March. We decided when we were there to keep in touch with each other, and we found the Indivisible Guide on Google. It was written by a couple ex-congressional staffers who wanted to shine a light on how Congress works. And their point is that someone in government represents you. So we looked in the 9th district where I live, who represents us. And it turns out that Jan Schakowsky is my congressperson, which I'm so grateful for. And it happens that in her office, political office, she shares it with all our local representatives, including my state senator, and including my state rep, including my alderman, and all the way on. So we are fortunate to have an Indivisible IL9 Andersonville Edgewater group working locally, hyper-locally, because we know that all politics is local. We do have Kelly B with us here today, who's actually here for the first time. She's running back and forth. She is managing our chat in the live stream and also here today. I would love to pass the mic to you, Kelly, because we would like to know exactly what y'all are doing locally in the 9th district. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I really like your billboard.
All right. I'm Kelly, and I'm a member of Indivisible IL9. Here's the billboard that Lenny wanted to show, including a human sitting in my chair. Lenny, I think you asked me to read our organizing statement for Indivisible IL9. So the work that we do, we're in, as Lenny mentioned, Jan Schakowsky's 9th district of Illinois. We meet in Andersonville, although now we meet virtually, as does everybody. But our organizing statement is that we are Chicagoland residents and allies who are pursuing a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive society by organizing in support for or against policies and candidates to achieve economic and social justice. So that's who we are. I will share in the chat or in the Facebook Live, how to get in touch with us. Today we did do some local politics. We had the alderman from the 48th Ward, Harry Osterman, attended our meeting. We are demanding CPAC now. We want a civilian accountability council in Chicago for the police, and Harry doesn't support that. So we invited him to our meeting to talk about why we wanted that, and he doubled down on why he doesn't. So if you're interested in fighting that fight, join us. And I think that's all you wanted me to cover, right, Lenny?
Yeah, thanks so much, Kelly. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, and we meet daily. I could have looked at the billboard, right? So we meet daily at 10 a.m. I will put a link again in Facebook Live. And specifically on Sundays at 10 a.m., we have an anti-racist work group where we are working together in our journey towards anti-racism and fighting the indoctrination of our white supremacist society.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, so much. We had a Chalk the Walk event in Andersonville here. Somebody wrote, "Stop being a racist." I propose that we say, be an anti-racist. And what does that mean? We're going to meet on Sundays to continue talking about that. And also in every conversation moving forward, in light of George Floyd's murder, where a cop kneeled on his neck. And you know, it is an uprising, not just in Chicago, but all throughout the world right now. Everywhere anytime you open up the news right now, there's another protest somewhere else in the world. And this is a real moment where we can actually move things along. We're very frustrated locally. For instance, Laquan McDonald was murdered more than 5 years ago, and they did initiate to have a civilian police accountability council passed, and that hasn't happened yet. We in the 9th District, Indivisible IL9, endorsed Lori Lightfoot in the municipal elections in 2019, and we endorsed her because we promised that she would be a force to transform Chicago. And in this moment, we are looking for leadership, and we are looking for not just small incremental changes, but real structural, long-lasting changes. And we're going to move forward. 3 things that we're going to do in Indivisible, not only in the 9th District, but throughout the state and throughout the nation, is hold the House. In Illinois, we were able to flip 2 districts, including Sean Casten and Lauren Underwood in the 6th and the 14th district. We were happy that our endorsed candidate in the 3rd district won her primary, Marie Newman, and there are 2 more endorsed candidates, which Nick is going to talk about later on today. We're going to hold the House, we're going to flip the Senate, and we're going to fire Donald Trump. And one way that we are going to do that in Illinois is to mobilize into Wisconsin. And we're really so thrilled to have with us today Gabbie Stasson from the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. We'd love to hear what you're up to and tell us how we can plug in.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabbie Stasson. I am one of the deputy organizing directors with the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. I am super excited to be joining everyone today. I got my start in organizing when I was in college. I was a sophomore during President Obama's re-election campaign. I got an email about being a fellow, which is like a campaign intern. I had no idea what I was signing up for. I had no idea what phone banking was or canvassing. When I got to my training, I didn't know what was going on, but, we got a great training. Everybody has to start somewhere. So I just really, really fell in love with organizing and how important it is, especially in the state of Wisconsin. I was an organizer in 2016 in northern Wisconsin. And, obviously it was a little disappointing after that. And I knew it was super, super important to continue doing this work and hopefully get Donald Trump out of office this year. So I continued to organize here in Wisconsin. We have a great program with the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. I've been a part of it since June of 2017. We are super focused on building neighborhood action teams, and our volunteers, create these teams within their neighborhood. And, they're kind of own everything from phone banking to door knocking, any direct voter contact they need to do. But it's really great because our teams are so excited when they have help from volunteers that are not from Wisconsin. We welcome all of your help. We are so grateful. Every time you sign up to volunteer, our state is going to be incredibly important in, winning the White House in November. And we have a lot of work locally as well. We want to really make sure we are keeping Republicans from getting a veto-proof majority. So we'll be working hard to protect a lot of our Democratic Senate seats across the state, and really making sure that those vote blue as well. So we are so excited. Our next big action that we are doing is going to be a weekend of action on June 27th and 28th. We will be calling people that are in the middle. We're super focused on having conversations with people at this point. These are people we never would have gotten to talk to before. And we are just talking to them about what issues are important to them. If you've never volunteered before, this is a great first step in volunteering, because you're just having a conversation with the voters on the phone about what issues matter to them and trying to have more of like an introductory conversation rather than persuading them to vote, Democratic in November. So it's a great first step to volunteering. I think Kelly is going to share the links so you can sign up online. Everything will be virtual. We are a completely virtual campaign at this point. So there are tons of events that you can do from home. Also at that same link, you will be able to find other events. We will continue to have events throughout the summer. But right now we're super focused on doing our listening phone bank. We also are really getting prepared to walk people through the process of requesting absentee ballots. We have now done 2 elections here in Wisconsin, unfortunately, in the times of COVID-19. So we have already started this process and will continue to work through talking to voters on the phones about how they can request their absentee ballots. So that will be another portion of that as well. And we will continue to do that throughout the election cycle. So we have plenty of volunteer opportunities that you can do directly from your home. We will start every event with a training, so don't be worried if you've never done it before. You will get all the training you need, and yeah, those events will be there. But yeah, that's all I have about Wisconsin. Thank you for your help.
Thank you, Gabbie. Can you describe for us who exactly you're calling?
Yeah, absolutely. So they are people that we believe are in the middle or we don't have any data on. So they're people, we tend to think that they may vote our way, but they are people who are kind of directly in the middle. So we believe they may sway one way or the other. We may find that they are an undecided voter and we need to have another conversation with them, which will allow us to continue to build a relationship with that voter. They may be a strong Democrat that we've never known about before, but they are an inconsistent voter. So maybe we need to continue to have more conversations with them leading up to November. So these are really great people that we're talking to and will really allow us to turn out even more voters in November and allow us to mobilize them closer to the election.
Gabbie, do you have any numbers of the number of people that you need to contact from now until, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't have any specific numbers, but we do have a large amount of people that we can talk to and try to mobilize.
Awesome, thank you. Can you shout out a phone number or an email that people can reach the Democratic Party of Wisconsin and easily plug in? I know Kelly's already going to put it in the chat box, but go ahead and shout something out too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a distributed organizing director who's coordinating all out-of-state help, and her name is Heba, and her email is heba@wisdems.org. I can also just type it to Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gabbie. We really appreciate you. We appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you for sharing your story. Everybody has to start somewhere. And we just want to tell people it doesn't matter if you've never done anything before, now is a great time to start. Again, there's only for you, there are very few days left before August, very few weekends left before August. For us in Illinois, 137 days. So thank you for everything that you're doing and hope to see you again here.
Thank you so much.
We are going to move forward. We're very happy today to have a guest, Christian Perry. Christian Perry and I were both Elizabeth Warren delegates. I was in the 9th district and Christian in the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. And yes, and we also come from the South suburbs. So it makes me very happy to have representation of grassroots mobilizing in the south suburbs. I was born on the south side of Chicago. We moved to the south suburbs to Creekside in Matson, Illinois, and then we moved to Mokina. My family's still out there. These conversations that need to be had right now about race and economic justice, they are not easy conversations to have with family and friends who have never talked about these things ever before in my time knowing them. Some friends I've known for a very long time and I don't know their politics. We just don't do it. But at this time, I don't think that anybody can avoid a political conversation with the uprisings in the street right now, with everything that's happening in Chicago, in my neighborhood, and at city council. People are engaged. People that have never watched a city council meeting before watched it yesterday and found it really interesting. So I think that people will continue to do that now. I would love Christian to come on. I'm going to read a little bit about him. Christian Perry is a political scientist, a community organizer, and a civic innovator from the South Side of Chicago. He's a co-founder of Black Millennial Resistance, a network of Black millennials and their allies fighting to end systemic racism. Black millennials recently executed the Right to Breathe march and rally, leading over 500 people in Palos Heights as they honored the lives of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. They called for justice, equity, and active allyship. And I thank you for being here, Christian, because there was a lot in that description that you can unpack for us. But I would love for you to just start and to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lenny, for setting this up and for inviting me and just for being a phenomenal ally, for being a phenomenal activist. I got to shout out Gabbie really quick, though, just because I'm a community organizer at my core, and just to hear your excitement, to hear all the work that you're doing in a tough area to do it. I just got to honor you and say thank you for all that you're doing. You're the reason why my 8-year-old will be able to grow up in a better America. I truly believe that. So yeah, about me, pretty much what Lenny said. I find myself, I grew up in West Pullman in the early 90s. I was born in 1990, so I'm still fairly young. But as we got older, we made that trek, right? My family started moving further and further south into the suburbs. By the time I left for the Navy, my mother found herself in Palos Heights. And when I came back home with my 1-year-old who needed to start school, I moved in with my mother, me and my son, and I started school in Palos Heights as well, at Trinity Christian College. And being a person of faith, this is one of those conversations that I think we need to, as Democrats, need to get better at having these conversations. And I tell people, I started to find myself in my early 20s squarely locked in that intersection between race, religion, and politics. And that is an intersection that, like Lenny said, she's got friends that they just don't even touch certain subjects. That's an intersection that people just don't like being in. And for whatever reason, I was comfortable. I'm comfortable talking about faith. I'm comfortable talking about politics. I'm comfortable talking about race because all make up who I am. So in that regard, we'll fast forward. When George Floyd happened, just as a Black man, as a Black father, just a couple weeks earlier, my fiance and I took our son out on a walk to honor Ahmaud Arbery. And then shortly after, we have Breonna Taylor and then George Floyd. And I was struggling. I was struggling a lot with a decent amount of pain, with a decent amount of frustration. And my natural disposition is to be, solution oriented. Very diplomatic, want to figure out how we can fix things. And I'll never forget, I woke up one Sunday morning, just very angry, just in a rage. And I needed something to do to productively channel that energy. And I figured that there were probably more young people like myself who were feeling the same. So when we got the ball rolling for BMR, really, me and my fiance sat down and we said, okay, how can we effectively engage our network, right? Because we know my fiance is phenomenal in her own right. She's the chairwoman of the Cook County Young Dems. She was also a Warren delegate in Illinois 1. She's also board president of Chicago Votes. So we actually, as Black millennials, know a lot of people in politics and government that are doing good work. And we said, we got to start channeling that energy. So I had a friend reach out to me from Trinity, and she said, I want to do something for the youth. And that snowballed very fast into something a lot larger than any of us imagined. We thought maybe 200-300 people would come out to our event, and we got over 500 people that came. And if you can imagine what type of suburb Palos Heights is, it's over 85% white. Homeowners get into Palos Heights and they don't leave. Those homes usually stay in the family. So it's a certain type of person that lives in Palos Heights that sometimes feels like what's going on in the rest of the world doesn't touch them. It doesn't come to their front door. And I know, having lived in Palos Heights for 6 years and going to school there, that racism is alive and well in a lot of these white suburbs where people, it's not, they're not overtly racist, right? But we're learning now that it's okay. It's not okay to just be not racist. You have to very much so be actively anti-racist. And there is just a wealth of information and a education gap that needs to be bridged when it comes to what does it mean to be an anti-racist. So that's what we wanted to show in our march. We had allies from across the spectrum. We were able to garner over 100 letters of support that we sent to the mayor of Palos Heights from different people, whether it be unions, whether it be business owners, academic leaders, faith leaders, and even some police chiefs, because we wanted to show that we do believe that even though institutions in America are deeply flawed and deeply rooted in systemic racism, there are people within these institutions who see Black lives, who value Black lives, and want to affirm that Black lives matter. What BMR wants to do is we want to give people a better avenue to do that in order to ensure that this moment is not just a moment, but it's sustained into a movement. So we're excited to do that work. And I had help from not just my leadership team, but one of the phenomenal organizers on the call, Nick. He also was on our leadership team, and he was able to help us leverage our networks to really turn out support. So that's kind of me, that's BMR. And Lenny, I'll open it up to what else we want to touch on.
Thank you so much for being here. I talk about my friends and family who are still in the South suburbs, and we just have not talked about racism, or I've never said to many of them anti-racism. They would not understand what that means. But can you give me an example of what it means to be a good ally in the company of good friends and family who might not be with you in this moment right now? How do we manage these conversations? Because I also have friends and family who say, Lenny, I really want, and I thank you for all that you're doing, Lenny, but I just don't feel comfortable saying anything at all. I think that it's better for me not to say anything because I think it's, I just don't want to offend anybody. So how do you manage that conversation?
Yeah, I'll share this. This was something that I shared on social and resonated with a lot of people. Silence is agreement and inaction is compliance. So you don't lead with that in your family circles, but if you're trying to figure out how to muster up the courage, my grandmother always told me as a little boy that what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And that's what I try to share with a lot of my white allies is that, listen, you don't always have to speak, right? In some moments, I might just need you to listen, right? I might just need you to hear me. I might just need you to see me. I might just need you to stand with me, march with me, elevate me, hold doors open. So these are conversations that, if you're a white ally and you're like, I don't know how to engage, no different than how they say parents are the first teachers and education starts in the home, so do matters of the heart. And making sure that people change their hearts and open their hearts toward realizing what this country was founded in and rooted in and how we're going to work together to fix it. You got to start having those tough conversations. And the way you do it is not in a judgmental way. It's not in a way to demean. You really, I tell people the best way for me to explain it is if you truly are struggling as a white ally with what you're seeing, if we had a moment at the march that was very powerful. I had everybody take a knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And everybody that was there that did that was like, oh my goodness, like just taking a knee for that long was uncomfortable. I kept looking at my watch. I could not imagine having someone take the life out of me, constrict my pathways to breathing for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. So that really bothers you. That really gets under your skin. And the fact that there are some people in power who aren't actively working to reverse the systems that uphold that kind of behavior, your heart will break. You'll be in pain. You'll hurt from me. And if you're hurting from me, when you're in these conversations, say with your loved ones, like you said, Lenny, you just allow that humanity to show. And when you allow that humanity to show and you say, hey, listen, this is, the best thing you can tell people is that this conversation about anti-racism isn't political. It's not a left thing or a right thing. It's a human thing. And it's something that we've gone so long without dealing with. So, I shared this story with Lenny earlier. When we were babies and we came into this world and something was wrong, whether we were hungry, whether we were tired, whether we had soiled ourselves, we didn't have these articulate ways of communicating to explain to our parents what was wrong. We cried. We cried until we got the attention that we needed. And what you see a lot of Black people doing right now in the streets is they're crying with their voices, with their protests, with the marches, with the rallies, with the plans that we're putting forward to help change society. So I'm asking my white allies to cry with me, right? Cry with me literally, and then also cry with me figuratively as you wrestle to find the words, to find your voice, to find where you fit, to help leverage your privilege, to make sure that our children don't grow up in a world that they're having this conversation 20, 30 years from now.
Thank you, Christian. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today was, why does it matter to really look locally? Why does it matter that you need to talk to your friends and family first before you go after your council person or your congressperson or the president? Why does it matter so much?
Yeah, so BMR, Black Millennial Renaissance, is really committed to the hyper-local approach because we understand, I had this conversation with another friend today, the ballot box is incredibly important, incredibly important. I'm going to be doing everything I can to help turn out Black voters, young voters, people who don't really participate, to make sure that we do fire Donald Trump. Incredibly important. However, the hyper-local nature of what we're dealing with, it's not just our political institutions. It's our academic institutions, right? It's our business infrastructure. It's our policing. And some of these things are not directly governed by the ballot box, right? So case in point, I'll give you an example. One of the things that BMR is committed to is helping institutions create framework that root out anti-Blackness in their policies, right? So my alma mater has a policy right now where if you have a balance, if you accrue a balance of $1,000, you are not allowed to register for classes until you get that balance down to zero. Now, across the board, that sounds equal when you hear it, when it hits everybody's ears. But when you have young African-American students that come from maybe single-family homes, or their first-generation student, or the income level isn't the same as some of their counterparts, to say to them, you've accrued this balance of $1,000, and even if you pay it down to $500, you can't register. Even if you work out a payment plan with us, you can't register. That's punitive, right? And that keeps that door closed, that door of opportunity closed to that Black student. So while we're working with academic institutions to help them find better frameworks from a policy lens, we also were able to raise enough money to send at least one student back to school in the fall to help cover a $500 balance that he had. So that is, yes, these hyper-local conversations from a voting standpoint, but also like, what's your college like? What's your library like? What's your local chamber like? What's your local Indivisible group like? Right? Does your local Indivisible group have a framework to help them wrestle with conversations around race, with conversations around equity? Right? If there aren't voices in your local Indivisible group that are challenging each other to grow and be uncomfortable, that's a problem, right? And we need to figure out how to do that better. So when we talk about systemic structural change, we're talking about the infrastructure of society, and that extends past our political institution, and our political institution goes into much, much more.
Thank you, Christian. We have a question from Diane on Facebook. Legislatively, what changes would you like made in our state regarding police use of force policies?
So there's a lot of good legislation that's being batted around chokeholds, around use of force, and all of that is great and fine and good. So especially if you take a peek at the bill that's in Congress right now that I believe is sponsored by Ayanna Pressley, that bill has a lot of good overarching things when it comes to use of force. But what I would like to see at the local level, so I saw something out of a small town in Illinois. I don't want to misquote the town, so I won't say who it is, but their local municipality just passed somewhat of a bystander law. So essentially, and I'm a Navy man, so this really hit my ears and made a lot of sense, because we have something similar in the UCMJ, but it's not law outside of the military. So basically what this small town said is that if you're an officer and you witness a fellow officer causing harm or exceeding the use of force that is appropriate for the situation, and you just stand by and you don't engage your fellow officer, you don't attempt to save that life, you don't stop the situation, you are going to be held accountable to the full extent of the law, just like the officer that perpetrated the crime against that person. And what that does institutionally for police, same thing it did for us as sailors, right? We knew that when we were out to sea and we hit a port, if we did something to jeopardize ourselves, yes, it would mess up our pay. But if I was your partner and I witnessed you do it, it would mess up my pay as well. And I'm not willing to sacrifice my hard-earned money for anybody. Just like I feel like a lot of police officers wouldn't be willing to sacrifice their good standing and their hard-earned money, even for their counterparts. So it just little changes like that on a local level. Those are the type of policies that we would like to see, as well as something like CPAC definitely in our major urban centers, not just Chicago, but every major urban metropolitan center needs to have civilian accountability. But also, so in my day job, I work at Cook County, in Cook County government. And Brandon Johnson just introduced a piece of legislation called Justice for Black Lives. If you're bored, Google it, Justice for Black Lives, Brandon Johnson, Cook County Commissioner. And what this bill does is it takes a deep dive into our finances. And that's another thing municipalities and units of government can do, and say, okay, Cook County reduced their jail population by almost 50%. Definitely their juvenile detention center. But yet corrections and the Cook County Sheriff got a raise. They asked for more money and got more money. So what does it look like to redirect? And what he proposed was at least 25% of that budget to mental health, to social services, to services, housing, to services that directly impact the community. A lot of what you're hearing this conversation, but to see it happen at a county level, at a township level, at a municipal level, when you see these policies being enacted, what we would like to see, and I'm speaking on behalf of BMR, and I'm sure a lot of other organizations, we would like to see every locality take a deep dive into what's already on the books and see how they can make it better.
Thank you, Christian. We have been having conversations about what does this hashtag mean, defund the police? I mean, there are a lot of articles out there that say maybe we're asking too much of our police force right now, law and order. And then there are some aldermen who say our systems are fine. We just need to strengthen them. We need more cops on the street will make us safer, especially in, for instance, Andersonville. You know, the presence of more police on the street make some people feel safer in some neighborhoods, but not in all neighborhoods. So will you speak a little bit on how defund the police and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so defund the police, and it's funny, me and my fiance had this conversation, and as a political, as a strategist, as a comms person, when I first heard it, I knew exactly what Trump would do with it. And he did exactly what I thought he would do with it, which is manipulate the 40 to 50% of Americans that get their information from him and equate defund the police to abolish the police. And that's not what it means. It doesn't mean abolishment of the police department. What it does mean is, how do we divest from an institution that almost never has anything taken from its budget? And in most cases, in most municipalities, they're trying to find ways to add to the budget. right? To beef up their police force. Like just on the west side of Chicago, you have people that were vehemently opposed to a new police academy. And you're talking about tens of millions of dollars being poured into that effort when we're divesting from education, right? So what people need to understand as a whole, when you say defund the police, what you're really saying is, let's take this same fine-tooth comb that we're okay taking to every other institution outside of maybe the military. We do this with education. We do this with housing. We do this with social services. We say, where can we trim? What can we take from? And nobody really raises a fuss about that. We need to do the same thing with our police. We need to say, do we have too many police on the street, right? As my local municipality, do we need 10 full-time police officers? Maybe we don't, right? What does it look like to say, you know what, in this area, we don't have enough social workers. In this area, we don't have enough mental health facilities. Defund the police, it's important to understand exactly what it means. And for me, what it means is we need to look at how we're funding our criminal justice system and how that is a misappropriation of funds that could be invested into what I'd like to call proactive initiatives. So police as an institution, is reactionary, period. You call the police when something already has gone wrong. You don't call the police before something has gone wrong, right? So instead of continuing to have a reactionary posture to how we take care of our communities and our communities' well-being, why not be proactive? Access to jobs, healthcare, social services, that's proactive. That prevents the need for some type of force to keep the peace or what have you. So last thing I'll say on defund the police is that it's important to understand that that message is going to hit certain people's ears different. And as you're communicating with your different communities, you may not be able to get them to understand like what that means. So you may say reinvest, you may say redirect. However, when you're in spaces that include Black voices, and I think it's important to be sensitive to the fact that there's a reason why Black activists and Black organizers have chosen such strong language, because I think we're tired of having to sanitize ourselves all the time to get you guys to understand what it is we're trying to say. When I just think about, white men in general, I don't know that I've ever been in a professional space ever where a white man has seemed to struggle on how to articulate himself on anything that he's passionate about. Only Black people have to do that, So I would say that when you're having these conversations, once again, I want to be mindful of the audience, explain, we mean divestment, just like we divest from education, just like we divest from mental health, just like we divest.
Thank you. We have a question from Tracy and a question from Megan. So first, do you have any ideas on how to start this work in a very white middle school? We as teachers are reading and listening right now, but come August, we need to start making concrete plans. We don't know where to start, despite our hearts being in the right place.
Very white middle school. Oh my goodness, this makes my heart sing. So curriculum, education. So we know, unfortunately, I'll be very honest, I didn't know much about Juneteenth until college. There's a lot about my own history that I did not learn until college, right? K through 12 does not do a good job of making sure that we teach the breadth of American history, specifically when it comes to the history of African Americans. So if you're a teacher and you guys are leaders in education in your community, I need you at your school board, I need you at your local state board, and I need you guys advocating for policy changes that allow for the curriculum to be expanded so that you can teach young people, young white people in particular, about the history of this country and what it means when they leave from their white community and they engage with people who don't look like them, right? We can't no longer afford for the education process to come full circle and hope that you take an African-American history class in college, right? Because I'm telling you, Trump takes advantage of those people who don't know. Trump and people like him take advantage of people who have not been taught the entire breadth of American history, right? And he manipulates them with that information. You have an opportunity as a middle school educator to petition your local school district, your state board to say, listen, I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know where we're going to raise the money from, but we will pull on every level of power in our institutions that we can to ensure that we're teaching our young people about the full breadth of American history, especially when it comes to Black lives. So that's one way as a middle school teacher, I think you could really lean in and get parents involved, clergy involved, your local elected officials, and say, hey, let's start revamping this curriculum. We can do this next year.
Thank you. And I'll also make a pitch to elevate those leaders in your community who you think are, or maybe it's yourself, to actually run for school board, because that's where a lot of these budget decisions are being made. I'm gonna read the question from Megan. Thanks for being here with us. If you were on a school board for a district covering an elementary school and junior high, what would you start looking at in terms of areas you would create change? Right now, our budget is up for review. And I can tell you that our administration does not look like the student body.
So funny. So I'll share this story. I have a minor in education studies, and that's because I was an education major. And then I saw how much they got paid, and I went ahead and pivoted. And there's a reality to that for a lot of Black and brown people who enjoy teaching, who enjoy engaging with young people. And the reality of it being that, you know, the pay and the salary just isn't there when we're trying to achieve upward mobility. So when you correctly note that your school does not have enough people of color, Black people, brown people that look like the students that they're serving, there are organizations that pull and give scholarships to Black and brown soon to be teachers and educators. And what I would say is that as a school board member, what does it look like to have a task force that says, how do we make our school district as attractive as possible to Black and brown applicants? What do we need to do in order to recruit them, in order to retain them, in order to make our institution someplace that's hospitable to them? Because at the end of the day, it's very important, not just for the Black and brown students to have teachers that look like them, it's also important for white students to have teachers that don't look like them, so that they can see Black people and brown people in positions of authority and understand to value them and respect them, despite what they may be seeing in other mediums, if that makes sense. So I think it's very important that as a school board member, that you're just unapologetically having these conversations and saying, hey, I don't know exactly what this looks like, but I know we need to take a forward-leaning posture on recruiting more African-American Latinx teachers.
I love that. We need to take a forward-leaning posture and being proactively recruiting African-American teachers. Thank you. Kelly, are there any other questions from the discussion in Facebook? Go ahead and send them our way. Otherwise, you know, Christian, thank you for being here. It really heartens me that you are so involved in the South suburbs. I have hope. I didn't think, you know, a couple of years ago, just 3.5 years ago, that we would be here today in the midst of a pandemic, and also in a moment of, you know, a real moral moment in our history where the whole world literally is watching, you know, the United States, and us in Chicago, the third largest in the nation, we have a chance to lead. You know, we have a chance to make real transformational change, not only with our policies, not only with the elected officials that we have in office to elevate the good work that they're doing. You know, thank you, J.B. Pritzker, and also Lori Lightfoot for keeping us safe. And, you know, our numbers are going down every day. We are going to get through this pandemic. We are going to do it together. But also in this moment, post George Floyd and post Amy Cooper, you know, what are we doing to move forward from here? Just a few years ago, how many people turned out for women's marches, and we said we were going to hold this administration accountable. If you haven't done anything since then, now is a great time to do something. So if there's one thing, or maybe you just want to close out and just plug people into what your work is all about and how to reach you, that would be a perfect way to close out for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you for that. I'll say if you have a chance, make your way to blackmillennialrenaissance.com. I know Kelly's able to put that in the chat, and sign up for our newsletter. The organization is very young, but we were able to capture close to 100 signups. And the goal is, you know, you hear a lot of people saying this, but I'm committed to not only leveraging my Black millennial network, but also our allies to ensure that this is not just a moment, but a movement. And the way we're going to keep in contact with you is through that, through our Facebook page. But then also, I'll say this, and this is a quote from Dr. King that he gave to a majority white crowd that was trying to organize for labor rights the year before he died. And he said, "We can get more organized together than we can apart. This is the way to gain power. Power is the ability to achieve purpose. Power is the ability to affect change. We need power." And for us at BMR and the work that we're trying to do is we are unapologetically trying to amass power so that we can affect change, so that we can achieve purpose. And that purpose is helping this country live into its creed that is so eloquently laid out in the Declaration of Independence that we fail to achieve every day. So if anybody wants to stay connected, you can stay connected with BMR by signing up by our Facebook page, our newsletter on our website. Feel free to donate. We're doing a lot of fundraising to help young people and also provide materials to help people. But feel free to connect with me at my email is christiandperry1@gmail, christiandperry1@gmail.com. I'm pretty responsive there. Follow me on Facebook. I'm really an open book and really am committed to helping allies learn how to become better allies.
Thank you, Christian. Also wanted to point out that I was just at the drag March for Change in Boys Town this weekend, and speaker after speaker said, privileged folk who turned out today in the streets, open your pocketbooks. This is what we need right now. So please consider opening your pocketbooks if you can. I'm going to put you on the spot, Christian, and have you introduce Nick, who's on the call today. I know you all know each other, and it would be just fun for us to hear how you know each other.
This is my good brother. This is Nick. Nick was, when I first reached out to Nick, Nick knows me through Marie Newman and I are good friends. So that's where we originally started to connect, when he lended his talents and his work ethic and his drive to help elect who will be our next congresswoman, in Illinois 3, Marie Newman. And from there, I don't know how I knew this about Nick, but I just knew that Nick was down. I don't know what other way to say that. I just knew that I could unapologetically kind of be myself and not have to filter myself for this white man, ask for what I need, and he would, without thinking twice. I'm telling you, Nick is ridiculously overworked, I'm sure, and yet was still hopping on planning calls. I needed somebody to go talk with Palos PD with me. I intentionally wanted a white person. Nick was like, sure, I'll make it work, and I'll be there. So this is, I'm telling you, the epitome of millennial allyship in Nick. And you guys probably know him well, but this is my good brother, Nick Yu.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Very nice introduction. But yeah, I was on many planning calls on my bike late at night. Loved it. Anything I can do to help. So for anyone who's on the live stream, I'm Nick Uniejewski. I am Indivisible's Senior Regional Organizer for Illinois. I also cover Indiana, but I work on a bunch of issues across the state, from vote by mail, working with our partners, and really doing all we can to get rid of the guy in the White House in just 137 days. And you can always take a look at Kelly's board on her wall to keep that as a reminder. So from an electoral perspective, today, we do have a couple updates. A lot of good stuff has happened this week. So I do want to call attention to some progress we've made in Illinois. We have had the governor signed the vote by mail expansion on Tuesday. And so that is now law. You can actually request a mail ballot right now through the State Board of Elections. And the law, what it does is not only can you request a ballot earlier than usual, but it is going to send an application for a vote by mail to about 5 million people in our state. And that will include anyone who has voted in the last 3 elections. So the 2018 midterm, the the municipal election last year, and the March primary. If you voted in any one of those three, you will likely be getting a vote by mail application straight to you. Also, if you have registered to vote since the primary or changed your address, you will be getting an application as well. And what that does is it really expands the electorate for us. We know that the right to vote is something that we really cherish in our country, and it's been incredibly inaccessible for people for a very long time. When you look at even the racial inequities in place, we don't have explicit laws now like slavery, but there are so many inequities caked into every system we have that you have things like the inability to get to a polling location. And all you have to do is look about 50 miles north of Chicago, and you can see the inequities that persisted in Wisconsin. And I'm sure Gabbie can talk much more about that. But you can look at other states like Georgia. And we are so thankful in Illinois that we have a governor and a general assembly that really puts the right to vote first. And as we move forward, so that is a very important piece. So if you do want to vote by mail, which we strongly encourage here at Indivisible, please request a ballot as soon as possible. You can request them now, like I was saying. If anybody's got questions on how to do it, the link is in the comments. So other things that we have going on in Illinois, we have a lot of great candidates running. We not only have Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, but we have a number of congressional priorities where we can really keep that House, flip a few more districts, and make a big change. And of course, we need to get control of the Senate too. Here in Illinois, Indivisible National has endorsed a number of candidates. We just endorsed 2 more candidates this past weekend. We endorsed Ray Lenzi out in Illinois 12 and Danny Brzezowski up in Illinois 16. Both of them are great candidates. They really have an opportunity to put the issues of their districts first and make sure that we are really aligning on our values no matter where we are in the state to fight for real progressive change. We also have candidates like Marie Newman out in Illinois 3. We have Sean Caston in the 6th district, Lauren Underwood in the 14th, Betsy Londrigan in the 13th, and so many other great candidates up and down the ballot in between. And then of course the fair tax. So there's so many places where we could focus right now. But if you take a look, Indivisible National has put a guide together for how do we move forward after an endorsement. And it's not just applicable to when National endorses a candidate, but for any time you engage in anything political with your group. And if you're not even an Indivisible group, this is a good framework too. So as we move past these things, there's a number of ways where we really encourage collaboration among groups. Indivisible started as something where we thought it would be each district has one group. And the great thing about Illinois is we have almost 60 groups in our state. And depending on what district you are in, you might have 10 to 15 groups within your state based on, or within your district based on your village or your neighborhood. And so one of the things we really encourage, especially as we work toward electoral goals, is to make sure all of those groups are talking. In Illinois, we have a great Chicago Alliance that keeps in touch that way. We have Indivisible DuPage, which is doing great work in the 6th and 14th districts. We have the Coalition for Change Illinois 3, which has banded together every possible group in the 3rd district to really get behind Marie Newman, and so many other organizations in between that are doing great work. So keep that up. That is really how we make a big movement, like Christian was saying, not just getting a candidate elected in November, but sustaining that power. So when it comes time to make these changes at the local level, to put our moral values into those city budgets, building those strong coalitions makes it so much easier. And especially once we get past November and we have to continue all that change to fight this systemic fight, those coalitions are really going to be powerful. And so that is just one piece of this electoral issue. But we have to keep talking to voters too. It's talking to our family members who either live in our community or they live in a different area where we can really make change with them. It's having those hard conversations, and it's partially getting uncomfortable. We have not talked about race for a very long time in our country. Our country is founded on racism. It's 400 years now. It's time. It's time to get uncomfortable. Have the conversation with that racist uncle who is saying those incredibly horrifying things, using those Fox News talking points. We are not going to sit by anymore and let them get away with this, because it's been 400 years. It's time. And so continuing that with your family members and friends, but also meeting people where they are from a place of respect. We don't want to go in blazing with "you're racist," because not being a racist is not enough. You have to be an anti-racist and fight for these things that really break down the systems in place. It's like we're talking about education, looking at the inequities there and achievement gaps. We have so many other ways where we can engage with unions, making sure we can increase union membership, because that perpetuates, as we see the last 30 years, Republicans have undermined unions so much that the gaps in income, when you break it down by class or by race, is so large. And just continuing these conversations is really important no matter what district you're in. So keep that going. We do have action steps at national. So it's not enough just to keep talking about these things. We really want to make this change in November. Election day is in 137 days. Having town halls and forums is great, but if we don't use this anger and this energy we have right now to really get people elected that put our values first, then what good does it do? So we have a lot of tools for Senate races. It's called the Payback Project. You can engage in key Senate races across the country for what I call the worst of the worst senators. We have Mitch McConnell, not too far away from us, who has blocked nearly every piece of the Democratic House right now. We have people like Susan Collins in Maine, who still cannot find a spine ever. We have people that are in Montana who are rubber stamps on Trump's agenda, and so many other states across our country. So the Payback Project is just one way where we can get involved to make phone calls, text into those states, and really connect with our neighbors to understand their values and their issues, and ultimately get these horrible people out. We also encourage people to get engaged in their congressional races. So if you live in any of those districts that I mentioned before, please volunteer. And I know this will be very exciting for anybody that's a campaign person to hear. Work with them, ask them what they need, and they will tell you. The best thing you can tell someone on a campaign is "I'm bored." So that is really all I have. I don't know if we have any questions in the chat, but as we do head into these next 5 months, please do all you can to elect people that really put our values first.
Thanks, Nick. And as Christian was saying earlier, we are Democrats. We also want to elect bold progressive leaders, but I just want to reiterate that we are separate from the Democrats, the Democratic Party. We are indivisible. We are grassroots. All of us are volunteers, and we get our guidance from Indivisible National, including, and we are very grateful for their national endorsements, but locally on the ground in every one of those districts that we have those endorsements, including the 16th and the 12th, like Nick was saying, we have local groups who are working to engage voters, to expand the electorate, to get out the vote. And that's really what is going to make a difference in 2020 and beyond, because there's a lot to fix. Nick, is there anything else? Oh, I wanted to mention that you talked about the Senate. We do have Senator Durbin joining us next week. So perhaps anybody who does have a question for Senator Durbin, feed the comment section. And we are also going to have Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox. So we would love your input on what we should focus on next week, next Thursday at 7 o'clock. And Nick, is there a website that people should go to either create their own groups or plug into their groups locally for Indivisible?
As always, you can find everything on indivisible.org.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Gabbie, for sharing everything that's happening in Wisconsin. Thank you for being amazing and engaged and excited about the elections in 2020. Thank you, Christian, for being my guy in the south suburbs, and we're going to be connecting further. There are so many, there are only 137 days until the Illinois election, but we have many Thursdays to fill. So we would love to have you back and to get updates on what you're up to and how we can plug in. And I love what Nick said, go to the campaign or go to your local groups that you want to uplift and say, give me a job, I'm bored. That's a perfect thing to do. And thank you, Kelly, for being here also. Sundays at 10 o'clock, anyone is welcome. We love your billboard over there. It's awesome. 37 days, everybody. CPAC now in Chicago. Thank you, everybody. And keep in touch. We'll see you next week.